I sent an email out basically to describe what Tom does, but just a quick overview. Tom is a tailor, bespoke tailor, where he was trained traditionally in the old craft way, but also under, was it Anderson?
Anderson and Shepherd, Holbury, yeah.
Which is more of an ad hoc kind of freehand experience in tailoring. So it's just for you to take the fears out of tailoring mostly. It's not going to be too technical at all today. And from this talk, the level 5s are going to be working with us with Tom and basically doing sort of something which is Tom's done today, maybe getting up in here, and we'll just have a bit of fun this afternoon with what Tom's taught us today. So, got anything else maybe to add?
No, that's good.
So as I say, you can just bear with me, we've got a bit of a code, introduce you to Tom Mahon.
Morning everyone, it's nice to be here and I hope you can hear me all right. A little bit like Cathy said, I'm not going to go through this piecemeal and try and give you a technical lesson because it's just not going to happen in an hour. But what I want to do is I'm going to pick a guy out of the crowd here, measure him up, and we'll draft a pair of trousers and we'll draft a coat, and hopefully that should take about an hour tops. You can by all means ask me questions if you want to, but some of it I will just be getting on with it. And the reason why Cathy's asked me to be here is I took quite a formal route through the business, which I've been involved in for about 35 years, hence the grey hair and everything. Like you, I went to college and I learned industrial pattern construction and grading, as it was then called. The titles maybe changed a bit, but it's the same thing. And you may be different to me, but I didn't particularly enjoy it. And the reasons why I didn't enjoy it was I found it very technical, and it's quite rigid, the system. And we use dot and cross paper, which I think you do, and pencils, and I found it quite a hard, rigid system. And what I found is the more I learnt about it, the less I knew almost to a certain degree, because I would measure something or I would design a block and it wouldn't look right, but I was kind of trapped in the mathematics and the scale and the system of drafting. And I used to get myself in a bit of a fluster about it because I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what was wrong, and invariably would make a sample, and that gut feeling that I had would often come to fruition and I'd see it in the product. So I don't know if anybody's noticed that. You may have drafted something, some of you have had a bit more experience and it doesn't look right, but you've checked all your measures and yada 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 and they seem right. So you get stuck in a bit of a rut. Now, anyway, I recovered from that and I moved on like everybody else did. But when I went to work for Anderson and Shepherd in London, tailors, like a lot of people, we learn pattern drafting, but we'll use a block pattern, which I'm sure in the profession that's what people do. So they develop their own or they'll use somebody else's. But I went to a company where we would draft a brand new pattern for everybody from scratch. And the time that it takes and the technical ability is there, but it definitely leans on your instinct. And it sounds a bit cliche to say it, but the artistic side of things. And our rule of thumb is if something doesn't look right, then it won't be right. So remember, when you learn pattern cutting and you look at the textbooks and you look at all the method, it's quite technical. So effectively it suggests it's like an exact science, but the reality of it is it's not an exact science. And you've got to remember that, because it's an interpretation from whoever's teaching you. It then goes into interpretation of a pattern to a style, then it goes to the cloth, and then it comes to manufacture, and there's loads of things all come together that don't make one thing absolutely right and something not so right. So you have to remember that there is flexibility in things, and that's how you learn, and that's how you get skill and confidence, okay? So I won't ramble on too much. So what we're going to do is we're going to measure somebody, we'll do a jacket and we'll do a pair of trousers. It'll take about an hour. Some people that I've spoke to this morning, they said an hour. That's like really quick to do that. I don't know how you feel about that, but that's all it should take. We don't spend all day drafting patterns. We could do if we were micro-managing it down into little stages, but we use our instinct, okay? But of course, I've been at it for a while. I do the coat. We always call it a coat in the trade, jacket, freehand. The trousers I use a drafting square because we do need straight lines. And I use imperial measures, so don't get flustered by that. Okay? That all clear? I need, well, we do ladies tailoring, we do men's, but I do a bit more men's work, so to make my life easier, could I have a gentleman that would like to volunteer to have a tape measure run round? Look at that, quick as a flash at the front. Okay, so I'll just take your trouser measures first of all, okay? And we'll draft a pair of trousers and I'll pull you back up to do a coat.
Yep.
Is that all right?
Fine, yeah.
So I believe this is going to get made this afternoon.
Oh, brilliant.
Well, a basic toile of it is going to be made. 30 and a half. Seven and 3/4.
Sorry, just while Tom's doing this, can I just mention to the level 5 students, we will be doing mimicking what Tom's doing a little bit later on. So hopefully you've got your pen and pads, and if you can just take a note of what Tom's doing here, i.e. what measurements he's taking, because you two are you're going to be getting things together in couples, and you're going to be measuring.
Okay.
Just make a note of that.
No, don't worry. That'll do us. That'll do. Right, okay, so we just took some very simple measures there. What's interesting, I'll give you a very brief description how it worked and how I learnt in the trade. The place where I worked was like something out of Charles Dickens, and this was in the 90s. But basically we would go in to a fitting room, we would measure a guy, and there used to be a salesman who'd put it in a ledger. And then we'd walk out of that room with about 20 measures in our head. The salesman would go to the front of the shop and transfer these measurements from the ledger onto a little sheet of paper. And then he'd bring those into the cutting room, and by the time he'd arrived in the cutting room, we were supposed to have drafted the pattern on by memory. And it was a pretty strict environment. And I remember my old boss, Holbury, whose works in the Victoria and Albert Museum, by the way, he used to work looking out over a window, and I sort of said something like, can I have the, can you remind me, Mr. Holbury, what the half-back measurement was? And he just dropped his shears and went, you were there. And that's how it operated. So it was quite a harsh environment, but it was good fun, and it really did sharpen up your brain. So we've taken some basic measurements, and we don't go into lots of details because I'm going to decide what looks nice on here. All right. So, sorry, what was your name?
Nick.
Right, Nick. So we're just going to draft a classic Savile Row pair of trousers with pleats. You've probably never had anything like that in your life, but we'll draft a pair now. Okay. So I'll just get on with it. Is that all right? I don't know how well you can see. Just very simply, we always use a card. I always like to put some cloth under there. Any old thing. I have two sets of shears, they're for cloth. These, if anybody's interested, these are Mr. Anderson's, who founded Anderson and Shepherd. So these have cut Fred Astaire's and Prince, everybody's suits. Anybody that was stylish, these were used to cut them. The blades have been ground down, so I use them to draft patterns now. I don't like those little sharp pattern shears. I think they're horrible, and the reason why I don't like them is that they can't move. They're too sharp. So it's a very soft approach that we have, okay? So anyway, somebody feel free to whistle or something, because it's going to seem awfully quiet while I'm doing this. There you go. Thank you very much. Although I use imperial, the scale, the system that we use is very much the same as everybody else. So Sorry, I'm like the Hunchback of Notre Dame because it's a little bit low, this table, for me.
So, Tom, can I just ask
Sure.
you quickly, was it just the waist and hip?
I took the waist, the hip and the inside leg. I'll just guess the knee and the bottom. We'll just put something together there. The rise we just judge as well, which is the difference between the inside and the outside leg. So clock's going 1:45.
What would be a typical Savile Row rise?
It's generally it's higher than most things. It's about 10.5 inches. So whatever that is.
On the natural way.
Yeah, because we don't like them down on the hips too much, and especially if there's waistcoats and such like. But yeah, so it's a bit higher, and it's a bit more flattering. If you look at the old templates of people and the old plates, they all seem to have longer legs, and they used to cut shorter waistcoats. It was a lovely, elegant look. But people do feel a bit, oh, these are weird. They feel a bit high. So this is going to be a little bit shorter.
Can I ask, do you do the back rise lower?
The back rise we do higher.
Higher?
Yeah, we do the back rise higher. If you want to get technical about it, we say about an inch and a half. If you want to be super technical about it, it's 1/12 of the scale, and the scale is used from half the seat measurement, which is pretty standard drafting, I think. So all the pattern cutters there are nodding their head in agreement, I guess.
And would you generally go for side adjusters on the waistband?
Yes, generally that is the most popular choice. It's very rare that we put belts on a quality suit, belt loops. Very rare. So, I did work it out once when I used to sort of teach people and do things. They're a reasonably modern cutting drafting book that I've got. There's about 25 stages or something for drafting a pair of trousers, and the system I use is about 12 or 13. And it gets all the same information down, but a lot of it is just, yeah, that looks nice, let's do it. So it's worth remembering. 18.5, 18 and 7/8.
Tom, what's the name of that book? Do you think?
Yeah, well, the most modern one was, I always get it mixed up with Freddie Mercury because the writer was Bulsara, and I can't remember the title, but I've got all these really old stuff out the 40s and the 50s and 60s, but his name was Bulsara, and it's a very, very good, clear book. It basically has a draft on one page and instructions on the other, and it's probably the best, and I like the patterns as well. So, just under. Okay. So. So have we heard of the 6 of scale drafting method for trousers? Has anybody heard of that?
What did you say, Stan?
The 6 of scale method. Anybody heard that?
Is it quarter scale, yeah? Half scale?
Well, the normal in trousers that we do is 6 and thirds, and that comes from the hip measure. And you have what's called a centre line system, which is what I do, where you have a centre line and you work everything around it, and then you have what's called a side seam system, where you do everything that way. So, 16 and a quarter. So the first part we do is what we call the top side, or people would call the front, but it's the top side. £30 and a half, so 15 and a quarter. 7 and a half, 7 and 5 eighths. Yeah, we're just working it up. Yep. So 15 and a quarter, 7 and 5 eighths, 8 and 5 eighths, 9 and 5 eighths, 10 and 5 eighths. And you'll notice me counting things on my fingers. That's not changed, I'm afraid.
Do you still have links with Anderson Shepherd?
Just this, you know, certain members of the staff that I see, and new premises that we're looking at in London. They're on the top floor, so we're all in a bit incestuous. We all see one another reasonably regularly.
How did you acquire Mr. Anderson's shares?
Well, the chap that was the head cutter, Dennis Holbury, they got handed down, basically. So I took over. I was the youngest, but I took over as Prince Charles's cutter and a few others. So when he retired, he gave them to me, and I got to take them with me. I didn't steal them, believe it or not. I always say I hold Excalibur.
Yeah.
Sounds a bit grand, doesn't it?
Are the tools very important for you, that kind of talismanic
Uh,
quality to them?
Yeah, they are, and it's strange. You can buy modern versions, but there are little details about them that just don't work. It's very, like, one very peculiar thing is that the handles are really quite small. So these are about 100 years old, and they fit my hands really well. They just seem nicer made, to be honest. But that's like a lot of old engineering, I think. You know, I mean, they're sort of priceless, these, really, to be honest. So I'll just do a little bit of working on my fingers. All this talking, you see, I have to use the technical stuff. 15 and a quarter. 8, 9, 5, 10 and 5 eighths. 10, 7 eighths. Okay, well, that's half the trousers done anyway. That's the top side done, okay?
Would you hold a block for each customer?
Yeah, I draft a pattern for everybody, and I keep that.
When you do fitting, do you make adjustments to that?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. I forgot a pair of pattern nippers. I normally nip all of these, but I can use my shears. I will do that afterwards. No, no, you're all right, Cathy. That's great. Thank you. Okay. So that's your top side done. So it's effectively half your trousers done, all right? Has anybody in here drafted trousers before? Hands up. How long does it take? Does anybody want to say how long it takes to draft a pattern from scratch? Yeah, I mean, this is not the big I am by any means, because if I was left to draft patterns the way I was originally taught, we wouldn't have this over within an hour, that's for sure. But I mean, just this little area, I don't know how much you can see on here, but around the fork, I know there's about 4 stages to that in a drafting book. There's about 4 stages to work it out. We just do that. There you go. That looks about right.
There's a pattern cutter, you wouldn't draft like that, you'd draft a basic block and then
That's it.
your basic block.
Hope all you level 5 are taking notes of where Tom's shoulder off the term. You know the bit of the statue, but it's worth just looking where exactly where he's drawing now.
What measure are you going for with the knee and the bottom?
I'm doing these quite slim, so 16 and a quarter and 18 and a half knee. Just under a quarter. Three quarters, 20 and 3/8. That's your underside drafted now. So that's effectively it done. So we just 16 minutes, a bit slow it is on Monday. Sorry? Oh yeah, I mean, the fundamentals, we've done these very traditionally with pleats, but you can lose the pleats, you can lower the rise, you can make them really skinny, no end of things you can do. But the fundamentals never change. Well, we leave what we call inlays, which effectively are, they're not big seams. It's excess material because our average price for a bespoke is about, our average price really is probably about £4 grand, £5 grand or something like that. So people want to be able to put on weight and get it altered in 5 years' time. In fact, sometimes you get them handed down to their children. And sadly, I've been around long enough to start doing that. Okay. Right, there you go.
Which mills do you use?
Oh, they're all Yorkshire mills, generally. Need a drink now.
So Nathan, you'll have your own Tom Mahon block to take home. Brilliant.
It won't fit anybody though, but
Only yourself.
looks good. All right, so that's the trousers done.
Just before you go on, Tom, can you just give the students an idea of some of the clientele that you have?
Yeah, they're wealthy. Not all of them. We don't talk about the clients because we can't. The only one that I talk about is because he talks about us, and that's Sir Jonathan Ive, who designed the iPhone. So Johnny's a very big client. He really likes what we do. He's been a client for about 13 years. So he's a cool client to have because he has influenced the world, I would say. There's an awful lot of people looking at smartphones and such like. And I was quite privileged, 12 years ago, 13 years ago, whatever it was, to fit a suit on Johnny, and then he goes, "Here, Tom, have a look at this fella." And he brought out the iPhone. He said, "We are going to absolutely change the world with this." And I was like, "Yeah, it looks all right, Johnny." So you get to see people like that. And we have very unusual people that, will fly us across the world to see them because money's no object. And do I enjoy that? It's okay sometimes. But the majority of people are people who just appreciate the craft and really nice things. Because a bespoke suit, as I say, we charge for a two-piece, on a standard cloth is about 3,200 plus VAT. So, you've got £3,700. But it's pretty easy to spend a couple of grand off the peg on a suit that doesn't fit. And there's always a compromise. It's always, well, do I like the cloth or do I like the style and the fit? So there's a lot of people come to us because they'll get 15 years out of these, and they're always right, and they feel super. So so some of our clients are very wealthy, very successful people, really interesting. I mean, another interesting guy, and it's because he spoke about us, is a guy called Paddy Lowe. He's just changed, well, I think he's still at McLaren, or he went back there, but he's like a chief engineer in Formula One, and he was just fascinated in the product and how we are engineers of cloth, to use his term. So it's interesting, the people that you meet. They are interested in what we do, but they're very powerful, driven people, and you have to deliver for them. So there's a lot of pressure involved with it as well. So anyway, I'm over the halfway mark, and I've got to do a coat now. All right. So, but I hope that just shows you that, and I don't know how exact I looked in what I was doing there, but I wasn't being that exact. I have an idea of what I want to do, and I just get on with it. And it took me 15 or 20 minutes. All right? And I'm not trying to be slapdash about pattern cutting, but the more you learn about the technical side of it, the more you must learn to be able to relax and start getting the art side of it. Okay? I'll be eating my words later because it'll probably be a complete disaster, but never mind. Right. Too low for me, that table. We'll draft a coat. Now you really will think I'm making it up as I go along here. We use a card that's a bit lighter than this. We never use dot and cross. Thanks, Cathy. I always use chalk for drafting because you can't get a nice line with pencils. It's too hard, it's too sharp. And I always sharpen it with an old knife. Of course, if you enter the industry, standards have to be more exact. But the reality of it is, you have to make a pattern in the first place. So just be creative and make a lovely pattern. Then you can tighten up on it and grade it so it's consistent. So it doesn't matter if you go into the industry and you're going to produce something that you're going to make 10,000 million units of. You've still got to start with a really nice pattern that will go together well. And once you do that, then you can put lots of hard lines on it so it looks more professional rather than my sketch jobs. Okay. When you measure somebody, you should ideally put a garment on them. And I can't be bothered to do it this morning because I'm all wired up. But it's just to get a centre line down the middle of the back and things like that. But for what we're doing, we can easily judge it this morning. But it will make life easier if you can put something on somebody with a little bit of structure, okay? So you just take your hands out of your pockets, that's great. Stay arm relaxed, that's great. So we do a chest, we do what's called a coat waist, which is basically right in the natural waist position there. Just let your arms relax. And you should always get people to relax when you measure them because they'll change their posture. I don't measure super loosely, I just let the tape measure lay around you. I don't put loads of fingers in. Yeah, now I've got it. Classic coat length. So, best guess is covering the back side. 28 1/4. Just let your arm relax, that's it. 5 3/4.
What kind of shoulder do you generally use, Tom?
Well, we try to keep it reasonably soft. So we have a system, which isn't that grand really, but we just look at people. We take in the posture to work out the balance positioning. Okay, if you just slip your hands out your pockets. We look at the angle of the shoulder slope. Okay, so we look at the posture, how erect or how stooped or whatever. We look at the angle, and then we'll look for. I mean, there's a classic drop right there. So we'll cut for that. Don't worry. We all are, because we're right-handed, left-handed. But you can see that as plain as day. And when you put a garment on, and what you'll do is you'll get collapsing, and you'll need to pick up this shoulder. Okay? So we try to cut for it at the start. We'll put a little bit of wadding in, but we don't like padding people up. Okay? So we're going to call this a 3. We got an off right. 5 3/4, so I'll just check his half back. Call it 7. Okay, if we look at the posture, you're very relaxed, which is good.
Yeah.
If you look at all drafting patterns, when we talk about the balance on a garment, it's the relationship to the back to the front, where it's trying to work out how people stand. And I have my own little theory on this. If you spend enough time looking at people in suits, which is a sad thing to do, but I do it, you'll often see this kind of issue with collars coming off the neck. You'll see it on newsreaders and all sorts. Pattern drafting and cutting is really rooted in the past. So people learn a system, and then they follow the next system, and they follow the next system. It doesn't change an awful lot. But people have changed over the last 50 or 60 years. And very simple things like people always used to do national service. You know, we were always at war with somebody. So there was always that men had to stand shoulders back and this type of thing. Whereas people don't so much now. And just looking at you, there's a little bit, I'm going to make you feel very comfortable, but there's a little bit more back balance here. It's just because he's just a little bit more relaxed, whereas if he was in the army, he'd be shoulders back. So as soon as you stand more erect, you shorten this distance. As soon as you relax, you increase this distance. So we'd put on what we call 1/2 inch back balance, and I'll briefly describe that when I cut the pattern. Okay? And of course, it affects the front. I mean, I'm going into a realm that's a bit complicated in 20 minutes of pattern cutting. But they're the things we think about. So we don't take lots of measurements. There are really weird things out there, like putting squares under arms, and I've seen all sorts of stuff. And the more you try to go there, the more you're going to confuse yourself. All right, in my mind. So ours is, as you'll see, is just a lot more freehand. See what it looks like. Right, that should do is we should be able to knock something up. Cutting it tight for my hour, aren't I?
If anyone's got any questions for Tom, feel free to ask as we go into the presentation.
Tom, have you got any clients with flamboyant taste or more flamboyant taste?
Well, sadly, they come to me because we're boring, I guess. We certainly have some bright colours, you know, orange suits and like baby blues and really vivid colours. But they still definitely want classic tailoring. You know, I mean, when I was here the other week, I was talking about a guy who all the suits were made that wouldn't fasten up because he doesn't have the time to fasten the suits up. I mean, he's a super wealthy guy. All his ties get tied for him because he cannot waste his time tying a tie. But I mean, this guy's a billionaire, but you know, they're very peculiar. There's some very odd characters. I have a block pattern here, which will save me about 5 minutes. I don't use it. I use it to get the centre back line here and the basics of a sleeve, as you'll see. I could do without it, but you'll see how much I use it, which is next to nothing really. Any block pattern will do. You get that centre back seam, the rest you work out yourself.
Due to the long-term relationships you have with your clients, did you take any clients from Anderson and Shepherd with you when you formed your...
Well, put it this way, it's safe to say I was off their Christmas card list for a while, yes. Okay. So first of all, we do what we call the shoulder slope, and I look at it and I think about who I've just measured, and I go, that's too sharp. I think I want something about there. Yeah?
To what extent do you feel you are continuing a tradition that's been established and that produces goods that are, if you like, perfection or as good as they could be? And if you look at a lot of luxury goods, for instance, they've been turned into brands and they're not made as well as they used to be. They're not. They're mass produced. So how does that affect the way you go?
Well, I guess we can only do our own thing. I've had a few apprentices over the years and it's not worked out. I don't think I'm a bad taskmaster, but and it's funny enough, I have very good relationships with these people that continues to this day, but I think they're surprised at how much effort is required. I think they look at what I do for a living and they look at something like this and they think, well, I'll get this wrapped up in 5 years, but they don't. So we're doing our best, but it is difficult to get people to do it at this level. What the future is for it, I don't know. I used to be very, very optimistic, and I still am, but I think perhaps reality's setting in a little bit. I think there is a fact that you just have to spend a long time not earning an awful lot of money, and it's not as appealing.
In London, that's a problem as well.
Well, it is, yeah.
People not getting much money in living there.
Yeah, well, that's right, which doesn't help, does it?
But is the way you go about it essentially the same as it would have been, say, 100 years ago? Don't cut corners.
Very much so, yeah.
What proportion of your clients are women?
It's a tiny amount, to be honest. It's purely just the way the clients seem to follow through, and we're snowed under with bespoke suits, and although I love cutting for women dearly, men are a little bit more predictable. Women do have a tendency to sort of move the goalposts a little bit, so it's slightly more of a challenge. And if you look at the trade, you'll find that there aren't a lot of bespoke women's tailors, and it's for the same reason. They find it because it takes a long process to make a suit, and men are a bit more stick in the mud. You know, they order a single-breasted 2-button, and if it takes 6 months, that's still what they want at the end of 6 months, whereas sometimes when we do the ladies it can change a little bit. So I don't do for a lot of ladies, and it's just because of that circumstance, really. We have a lot of ladies working the trade, though. In fact, all of my key staff are female, which is, it's purely because they're good at what they do. That's it. We don't, That's the nice thing. I did say this about the student when I was talking the other week. What this trade does afford women in the trade as such is if they go off and they get married and they have children and they come out of the workplace, we're waiting for them with open arms because they have skill, and that skill just improves over the years. So you never miss the boat in tailoring. If you're good, you're good. And if you want to live here and we have to send work to you, we'll do it. So it's quite liberating in that sense.
Would you say that you have a big international market?
Yeah, 75% of my trade is, 75% of it's is the US and abroad.
They're buying into the Britishness?
Yeah, very much so. It's a bit cliche, but yes, they do like it. Yeah.
How many people actually work on the suit itself?
If you're working on a bespoke suit, you will have 5 individuals. You'll have a specialist maker for each part, and you'll have a finisher, and then you'll have myself, and that's excluding the people who do the trimmings and such like. So, right, where was I? Sorry, I'm slowing up a little bit here. Waist measurement. That's five and 7/8. So we just have a very simple mathematical formula that we get for working out our backs, our measurements, and that is it. That's 1/3 of the garment cut.
You ever cut a one-piece back?
We have done it the odd time, yeah, but generally not. I have to admit, generally not. You may or may not have noticed we don't do a hip measurement when we do a coat. We just do what looks nice. I don't know if I'm getting stage struck or excited here, but I am getting pretty hot. Is it just me, or?
I think you're under the lights.
I wouldn't worry too.
Yeah.
Don't worry if I collapse on the floor. Just give us a couple of minutes. I'll come round. Cheers, Cathy. 17, 17, 8.
Tom's trying to do something up here, just give be a bit quiet.
So we get a few fundamental parts of the pattern here, and then we just try to make it look nice.
Tom, you know if you were doing that for the ladies, would you use the same process?
Very much so, but then I'll put in a side body because it just wouldn't work without the side body. So just doing the sigh there, when you get into the drafting, there's loads of stages for drafting a sigh, but you'll see we just do it like that. So 8 and 7/8. Looks a little bit what we call crooked.
Do you have a cut?
Excuse me, can we have quiet, please, because our Colin's asking a question.
Do you have a cut for a raglan shoulder on overcoat?
As long as I'll do my best to avoid it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do the odd raglan overcoat.
Why do you try to avoid it?
Just because we always have fun and games with the matching up. It's just a headache. We don't do an awful lot, but raglans, getting them right is quite a skill, I think. Especially, it's okay if you're doing a block pattern that you've done millions of, but when you're doing it for different individuals of all shapes and sizes, you know, it can be quite difficult.
Yeah.
You're doing well to hang in with me here. I've only got the sleeve to go, and then we're done. So when I draft something, you can see how we're doing it. Okay, we're trying to make things look nice, so we might make it bigger or smaller to make the lines work well. And then when I come to actually cut it, you can't force shears to do the wrong thing, so we'll just check this. So we're just checking this balance point here. That needs to come up a little bit.
Asked to make suits for the younger.
Not children. We get teenagers type of thing, 15, 16, but that's about as young as it goes, really. The problem is they'll grow by the time I get the job done.
Do you ever collaborate with like fashion designers or anything like that?
I've done a little bit with a sportswear company and a school uniform thing where we raised the standard basically, but generally not, I must admit. So Cathy, are you getting the pleasure of trying to put this thing together? Oh, she's gone, is she?
She's running to try and find it.
Just by accident. I just went up for basically a summer job and liked what I saw, and I ended up staying for my sins.
So Tom, does this pattern include the seam allowance?
Yes, it does, yeah. Okay. So then, we're almost there. I'm running over my allotted time. Sorry, I need my volunteer. Can I borrow you a second? I threw the information in the bin and all the excitement. Just relax there, that's good. $22.25, that's brilliant. 5.5, sir. Nearly there. Nine. Okay, that'll do. So there we have it anyway. Took us a little bit longer than normal. But there's your fundamentals of it. And the sleeve, we do a 50-50 sleeve. So I'm reasonably confident we'll be able to put that together and you'll have something to work with. So it didn't look that technical, did it? And that's the whole idea of it, really. I will say to draft a coat like that takes a little bit more effort, but the trouser cutting system is very simple. And you know, I feel you could learn how to do trousers, you know, with a week. So it's not that long. Might be disappointing for the people who write the books, but if you follow that system, you'll be able to draft patterns for people pretty quickly, I would have thought. This is a little bit more difficult because the technical steps are quite short, so you can learn them very quickly, but the only problem is it's visually looking at it and seeing what looks right or wrong that takes a few years. All right? So that's it.
Has anyone got any questions at all for Tom? Any more questions? Say working with level 5 this afternoon, so don't be too, because obviously he's working with white chalk there, but he will be in the studio with us this afternoon for any questions and to go over maybe if anyone's got anything you want to ask him there as well. Nicole?
No, just ask one more. So I'm just interested in how it works with the Royal Warrants, because I did some work with Peter Reilly in Birmingham at a bedding company. That was
Right.
So I know, is it that means you have to protect a lot of information?
You do. You have to protect information, and they also look very much at what you do.
Yeah.
So when you're doing work for the royal family, they scrutinise that you're actually doing the work. That's probably the number one thing, because and they keep tabs on you for a long time, because what they do is they want to make sure you're not just getting it done offshore. Having the royal warrant is as much a curse as it is a blessing, is the top and bottom of it. But you're absolutely right. They keep the tabs on you. There's something else I wanted to say about the royal warrant, but it's...
That keeps your client base quite strong as well, doesn't it?
Well, it does, yeah. I mean, it's recognition. You know, when I used to do all the stuff for Prince Charles, it was more of a bind, to be honest. I mean, Charlie was quite a cool guy in his own right, but I don't think people looked at him as a style icon necessarily. But you know, it's quite difficult because you'd just be sitting at home and the telephone would ring and they say, Royal Highness wants to see you at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. And a car would pick you up and you'd be driven off to Highgrove. And sometimes it was a pain, but it was a nice experience. I mean, I was only a kid anyway. I was only like 26. So I didn't appreciate it, but I'd go to Highgrove, we'd fit Charles, we'd do the things, and then I would sit with William and Harry, and we'd have briskets with Prince Charles and a bit of breakfast. And of course I was 26 years old, and I never thought anything of it. But look back now, I think it's quite a cool thing to do. You know, there's the trade is quite, if your relationship with your clients is, they become very good friends. So,
And that's the main key thing, I guess.
it very much so.
Just one bespoke client on that kind of, level. It's about keeping that relationship with
Yeah. I mean,
Do you actually socialise with them, or is there
oh
still-
God, yeah.
Oh, you do?
Definitely.
So there's not that
Well,
communication.
when I used to write my blog years ago, I used to like the pub. And I wrote an article about if you go to this pub in Savile Row and you look at these people, I'll tell you things to look out for, and you'll be able to identify who they are and what they do. And the cutters drink here, and the tailors, the coat makers drink there. And we had a guy, which happens all the time. He got in touch with me. He's a lawyer in Switzerland. He goes, "Look, Tom, I used to read your blog years ago. Always promised myself a suit from you. So here I am. I can afford you. I'm coming over. I want to order 2 suits, but under the condition that once you've measured up, we go to the windmill." So there's a lot of socialising because there's a lot of that goes on. It's that sort of a business, I think, and it can be a bit problematic. I go to America 2 weeks today. I fly to Los Angeles, and I feel very blessed. It's very kind of all these people, and although I treat everybody and I have a relationship with them all, theirs with me is perhaps a little bit more special. It's not because I'm special, but it's a bit like, well, Tom's my tailor and he's come from England. Whereas I'm going to America and I'm seeing a lot of my clients. So although I'm really glad to see them, they all want to take me for a drink. And believe me, it's hard work. With jet lag, it's like, come on, we've got to go out for a drink, and people fly in, and because in the US, if you're in San Francisco, they'll say, "Oh, well, I'm in LA, but I'll come up and see you." And but it's very much that sort of business. But I'm partly to blame for that because I encouraged it too much for the last 20 years.
Do you wish that, obviously, because of the labour and the expense involved, it's only a product that's available to a very narrow strata of society, unless someone saves up for a long time and makes it. Do you wish it was more democratised?
I do, but to be quite honest, you'd be surprised at the scale of people who buy my suits. And they'll go everything from a tree surgeon or a guy that works in a factory. I think if people appreciate what they are, they'll afford it. And here's a really interesting way of looking at it. This might seem quite a glamorous profession and an exclusive product, okay? But let's just put it into context. So I study for years, and you're always learning, and we put an awful lot of effort into this product. And if you say as a ballpark figure, it costs you £3,500, £4,000. So as soon as you say that, it's like, ooh, it's pretty exclusive, and I don't know if I could ever afford it. But you'll get 15 years out of it, and you really get something special. Now, if you're fortunate enough to have your own home, and you have a problem with your roof, and you get a roofer out, and he says, "I'll retile this roof for you," he's going to charge you £4,000, and he's going to work there for the day, and you'll think nothing of it. You say, "Well, it's £4,000, it's a big job." But you see what I'm saying? So people will pay £4,000 to have the landscape gardened by somebody who's perhaps only learnt their trade for 2 or 3 years. So for ours at 3 or 4, I mean, the apprenticeship was 7 years. So if you really want to nickel and dime it, it's actually good value. And if people understand it, which a lot of people do, that's why I make for some of the wealthiest people in the world, and then just an ordinary guy that works at the council offices. Yeah, he'll only buy 1 suit every 5 years, but he's just as valuable, and he gets the same out of it. So it would be nice if we could make it more affordable. But as I say to the students, you have to study, you have to work really hard, and you need paid. So it's kind of like chicken and egg, really. It's
How many working hours do you think actually goes into a completed suit?
well, I would say roughly about a week. You know.
Of 5 people?
Well, roughly, yeah. I mean, you could, I did break it all down, and people have different records, but I mean, a coat, it depends what sort of levels you work at, because you can put not more effort into the product. I mean, you can to a certain degree, but I have a benchmark of work that I want to put in the product. But some tailors, like Huntsman, will say, well, you've got to have 5 fittings. So you've just doubled the workload. I don't need 5 fittings, because what do I want 5 fittings for? I'll be here all week. You know, we would do 2 fittings and the suit will fit. So you're paying for a service then. So I reckon it's about a week, really, of actual labour for these individuals. You know, the cutters part of it, a lot of that is made of experience. I mean, if you look at what I do, in theory, how many suits I need to cut and what I need to do, I should be finished by 1 o'clock on a Monday, and then just go down the pub. But it never works like that, because there's all the travel and there's all the other rubbish that comes in with it. So more to it than meets the eye.
Just come back to the Royal Warrant. How does that work? Do you, because obviously it's a prestige thing, do you apply for that, or do
No,
they
well,
come to you?
going back now, I don't have the warrant with Prince Charles. I packed Charlie in 15 years ago, and it was nice to pack him in, because he was very nice and we got on very well. But it was nice for me to write a letter and say, look, I can't continue. And the reason why I did that was geographically, I based myself in the north of England. So you have to be on his beck and call all the time. So that was it. So I got a very nice letter from him. But yeah, there is a Royal Warrant Holders Association. And as I say, you've got to watch your P's and Q's with them and do it.
Come to you, or how does it work?
It generally, yes, I guess you could say they come to you. They come to you because of your reputation, like anything else. You don't have to have a Royal Warrant to come to me. Some people say, oh, well, I've heard about him, he's okay. So they will do that. Then after a period of years, it can either be a member of the royal family, or at Redmayne's, for example, we made all the shooting suits for Balmoral, and you know, for the keepers. So it's a service. It's not quite as glamorous as you might think. I mean, Heinz tomato ketchup have it as well.
Oh, no, I know.
You know?
Well, I didn't know about Heinz tomato ketchup, but I know loads of different products have it.
Yeah.
I was just curious how it goes
Yeah,
about.
but it just, yeah, they come to you like any other business, and if they use you and there's a relationship and there's a time period goes by, that's how you get the warrant, basically. So, all right, anything else?